The great chamber of the Galactic Council glittered like a star trapped in glass. 1,000 banners of 1,000 species shimmering above rows of alien delegates who believed they were the architects of peace. Their voices filled the air, layered, distorted, and full of pride, as they prepared to decide the fate of one small blue world, Earth, humanity. The youngest species among the stars, a race that had crawled from its own ashes barely 2 centuries ago and now dared to stand beside empires that had existed since before humans learned to walk upright. The council saw them as arrogant, reckless, too ambitious, and today, they would be put in their place. At least that's what the chairwoman of the Zealer Dominion said as her silver tendrils glowed beneath the cold light of the Senate dome. The matter is simple, she hissed. The Terrans have overstepped, they expand beyond their station, they build weapons that threaten stability, they spread their influence like disease. Her voice echoed as hundreds of alien leaders nodded in agreement, holograms flickering with approval. The vote was already decided before the meeting even began. Earth would be declared subordinate, stripped of equal rights, its fleets disarmed, its colonies taxed, and its sovereignty erased under the banner of galactic safety. To most in that room it was nothing more than procedure, another vote in a long list of decisions that kept power in the hands of the old empires. But for one man, sitting at the center of the chamber, it was something else entirely. It was humiliation disguised as law. Captain Elias Roan, human ambassador to the council, the first of his kind ever allowed to sit among them, stood as the lights dimmed and the final vote began. His uniform crisp, his eyes calm, though deep inside his heart pounded like thunder. He had heard the whispers for weeks, that this would happen, that the council could never tolerate a human voice among them, that they feared the same species who once conquered their own world not through blood but through will. When the vote ended, the chairwoman looked up and smiled, the kind of cold smile that tasted like victory. "It is decided," she said. "The Terran Confederation is hereby recognized as a subordinate protectorate under the rule of the Galactic Council." Her words echoed across the hall, translated into hundreds of languages, and as they did, laughter spread through the chamber, soft at first, then louder, crueler, as the alien delegates turned to the lone human who stood among them. "You evolved from beasts." One reptilian senator sneered, his scaled lips curling into mockery. "And beasts should serve." Another delegate from the crystalline worlds added, "Be proud, human. Not every pet gets to sit at its master's table." The laughter grew louder, bouncing off the marble walls until it filled every corner of the room. But Elias did not move. He did not shout or curse. He only watched them quietly, his gaze steady, and when the translator on his collar flickered to life waiting for his response, he reached up and turned it off, his own voice echoing without translation, raw and human. "You think peace means chains?" he said softly. Though few could understand the words, they could feel the weight of his tone, the calm before something greater. "You mistake our silence for submission?" he added, then bowed slightly, more out of politeness than respect, and walked toward the exit, his boots clicking softly on the marble floor as the laughter followed him out, echoing like ghosts in a storm. None of them realized that the silence he left behind would haunt them for the rest of history. Outside the hall, the light of Titania Prime's twin suns bled across the glass towers of the capital. The sky burning gold and crimson, Elias stepped into the open air, removing the insignia of his uniform, the white star of Earth gleaming in his hand, and for a moment he looked small against the endless skyline. A single human surrounded by a galaxy that thought itself superior, but there was something in his eyes that no one saw, the quiet resolve of a predator who had just been told it was prey. He activated his wrist terminal and sent a single encrypted transmission to Soul Command. 2 words only, "It's time." Across the galaxy, in the dark reaches of human space, ancient systems began to stir. Networks long dormant came alive, and the old war AI buried under the ice of Europa opened its digital eyes for the first time in 200 years, its voice a low mechanical whisper. "Protocol Genesis confirmed. Stand by for recall." Deep in the oceans of Earth, beneath the old Atlantic Trench, hidden machines built before humanity ever reached the stars began to hum, their lights glowing red, one by one, awakening from their slumber, and the planet itself seemed to breathe again. Back on Titania Prime, the council resumed its session, unaware that they had just signed the end of their dominance. The chairwoman toasted the decision, her tendrils coiling with pride. "At last, the Terrans are contained," she said. "Their arrogance will fade, and peace will remain in our hands." The delegates laughed again, celebrating their cleverness, their ignorance radiant, but far away, in the void between stars, human colony ships received silent orders to return home. The outer stations of the Terran Confederation went dark, civilian traffic vanished, trade signals ceased, and even the communication relays that connected Earth to the galactic network went offline. Every human world turning inward, quiet, watchful, as if holding its breath. The aliens interpreted it as surrender, a victory, but it was not surrender, it was the inhale before the scream. On Earth, news of the Council's decision spread like wildfire. Anger rippled through cities and colonies alike. But there was no chaos, no uprising, only calm unity. The old leaders of humanity gathered in the subterranean chambers of the Terran Citadel beneath New Geneva. Ancient banners hanging behind them, the white star shining against a black field, the symbol of the First Terran War. The prime commander of Earth, an elderly woman with steel-gray eyes, stood before them, her voice steady. "They called us beasts," she said. "Then let them learn what happens when beasts remember their strength." No one applauded, no one cheered, they only nodded in silence, a decision made without words, the kind of decision that changes the course of stars, and far above the planet, in orbit, the first of the dormant Leviathan-class ships came online. The largest war machines humanity had ever built, their hulls black as the void, their cores glowing faint blue. The ship AI greeted the returning crew with one message: welcome back to the storm. The Galactic Council continued to mock them, broadcasting across the networks about how humanity had finally accepted their place. Even creating entertainment feeds showing humans bowing in submission, fake holovideos designed to humiliate, and for a while, it seemed the galaxy believed the lie, until small things began to happen, subtle but terrifying. The first was the disappearance of the Zealer Dominion's border station. A structure the size of a moon, gone overnight, the only trace left. Behind was a faint energy residue shaped like a pulse. Rhythmic and human, the Council dismissed it as an accident. Then the trade route between Aurelian and Vrixia collapsed. All ships lost. No distress calls, no survivors, just silence. When the investigation team arrived, they found something carved into the side of a drifting freighter. A message written in Terran script: "Do not mistake our silence for weakness." By the time the Council realized these were not coincidences, it was too late. Earth had already disappeared from their tracking maps, completely cloaked, and every sensor directed towards Sol returned static. The system that once glowed bright blue on galactic charts was now a void, like a black hole that refused to be seen, and the old races began to whisper, quietly, fearfully, about an ancient legend, that humans were never meant to rule the stars. They were meant to survive them, that their minds were forged in struggle and their hearts burned with the kind of fire that never truly dies, even when peace tries to smother it. And now that fire was awake again. Meanwhile, Ambassador Elias Rohn returned to Earth through secret channels, stepping once more onto the soil of his homeworld, greeted by the same cold wind that had carried every human victory in history. He walked into the command center where the leaders awaited him, the room silent as he placed the Council's verdict on the table, the hologram flickering with alien signatures. "They called us subordinate," he said simply, and the commander across from him replied, "Then let them learn what that means." He looked at the glowing map of the galaxy, thousands of stars blinking like waiting embers, and whispered, "They laughed." The commander nodded. "Yes, they did." He turned, his eyes like steel. "Then it's time they remember why they stopped laughing before." Above them, the Leviathan fleet aligned into formation, engines silent, their hulls reflecting the light of the rising sun over Earth. Millions of drones swarmed between them like a school of metallic fish, patterns forming across their ranks that spelled one name: humanity. And far beyond the solar system, the first Terran signal spread through the void, faint, calm, but unstoppable, a heartbeat echoing through every channel of space, slow, deliberate, unending. And when the aliens heard it, even those who had laughed in the council chambers grew quiet, because deep down, every species in the galaxy knew what it meant. The humans were coming, not for conquest, not for power, but for dignity, for the peace they were denied. and the galaxy would soon learn that there is nothing more dangerous than a species that has nothing left to prove. The Galactic Council stood proud in the weeks that followed, congratulating itself for taming the humans, declaring the decision a triumph of order and civilization. The great empires of the stars boasted on every channel that peace was secured and the Terrans had finally accepted their proper place. Their speeches echoed through the marble halls of Titania Prime, all arrogance and self-praise, while across the galaxy statues were raised to honor the Council's wisdom. None of them noticed the quiet shift that followed, the kind of silence that feels too heavy to be ignored, the kind that sits in the air before thunder. The humans had withdrawn, closed their embassies, recalled their traders, even dismantled their listening posts. The galaxy mistook it for shame, but the few who studied history recognized it as something else, the same calm that came before the fall of the First War, and deep within the archives of the Council lay records of what happened the last time humanity was humiliated. They didn't weep, they prepared. The Zealer Dominion's military advisors assured the Council that the humans were too weak, too dependent on trade to resist. They have no fleets that can threaten us. One commander boasted, "We monitor every Terran system." Yet no one could explain why Earth itself had gone dark on their long-range sensors. The blue planet that once glowed brightly on every star map now appeared as a black circle, unreadable, unresponsive, invisible, and when a Vrixian scout ship approached Sol to investigate, it vanished without a trace, no debris, no signal, just gone. The Council dismissed it as a navigational accident, arrogance louder than reason, because pride always blinds before the fall. On Titania Prime, alien citizens celebrated humanity's submission with grand parades, neon lights and laughter filling the streets. The holoscreens displayed mock plays of humans bowing before alien masters. A cruel comedy that spread across 1,000 worlds. Even the Empress of the Therax Empire joined in the spectacle, drinking silver wine as she declared to her court, "The beasts have learned obedience." Her audience applauded, unaware that in the same moment the lights of her palace flickered twice, an invisible pulse rippling through the system's power grid. A Terran signature hidden inside the energy wave. The first warning, unnoticed. Within the Council chamber itself, a few younger delegates grew uneasy, their sensors picking up strange disturbances. Gravity readings shifting near the edge of charted space, as if massive objects were moving unseen through the dark. But their warnings were silenced by the speaker, who called it paranoia. "The humans lack the technology for such feats," he said. "And even if they did, they would never dare strike the Council." Arrogance echoed again through the room. But the old admiral of Arlon, the only one who had fought humans during the last war, rose slowly, his eyes dark and weary. "You are wrong," he said softly. "They always dare." The chamber went silent for a moment before laughter drowned him out again. "You give them too much credit, old one?" the speaker mocked. "They are primitives dressed in metal." The admiral turned and left the hall without another word, muttering under his breath, "Then you have forgotten what primitives can become when provoked." Far away, deep in human space, something ancient was awakening beneath the oceans of Europa. The Terran core network humming with power as forgotten AIs came online, their voices speaking in unison. Directive override, Council designation hostile. The lights of Mars burned red through its dust storms as massive forges ignited, creating ships larger than cities, silent and dark, built with stealth alloys that absorbed light itself. Entire human colonies worked without rest. Not in panic but in focus, knowing what was coming. The Terran commanders did not speak to their people about revenge. They spoke of remembrance, of dignity, of showing the galaxy that peace is not weakness, that patience is not fear. They worked in silence while the rest of the galaxy drowned in pride. The Council, meanwhile, began seizing human trade routes, demanding tribute and installing security fleets near Terran borders, their arrogance turning cruelty into policy. The outer colonies of humanity received broadcasts from the Council demanding surrender of all weaponry. The messages ended with a threat. Defiance will be met with eradication. The humans responded with silence, every frequency going dead within minutes. And when the Council tried to re-establish contact, their satellites found nothing but empty space where once human relays floated. All gone. No wreckage, no trace, just a cold void. 3 weeks later, the first transport convoy of the Council vanished. 12 ships carrying luxury goods from the Empire's core worlds to Titania Prime simply disappeared mid-jump, The navigation logs ended with one sentence written into the data stream by an unknown source. "We hear your laughter." The council grew nervous but still clung to arrogance, blaming pirates or solar interference. The speaker told the press, "Human retaliation is impossible. Their fleet numbers are insignificant." But in the shadow of the Scylan Rift, unknown energy readings appeared, small at first, then massive, entire sectors showing power surges identical to Terran engine cores. The Council's science division panicked. "This is not possible," one scientist whispered. "These readings match pre-war Leviathan signatures." His report was buried within hours, but copies leaked, spreading through black markets and old military circles, and fear began to bloom, quiet and poisonous. In the Empire's capital, the Empress hosted another gala, mocking the humans once more, calling them children playing with fire. But that same night, her palace's orbital sensors detected an object moving through the system at impossible speed. Too fast to be natural, too controlled to be debris. It passed through 5 moons and left no trace, its signature pure Terran. The word on the telemetry screen read only observer class. The Empress demanded immediate explanation, but her scientists simply stared in disbelief. "Majesty, it wasn't an attack," one said. "It was a scan." The next morning, her palace walls bore strange markings, faint glowing lines forming a single Terran word: remember. The media broadcast it everywhere, calling it a trick, a fabrication, yet across the galaxy other worlds woke to the same message burned into their skies, projected by invisible ships that no radar could track. Remember, the word haunted them, simple, human, powerful. It was not a threat. It was a promise. By now, the Council's arrogance began to crack. The younger members questioned if perhaps the Terrans were not defeated but preparing. But the speaker silenced them again. "Let them prepare," he said, smiling. "They can build their toys, the galaxy belongs to us." But deep in his own palace, even he could not sleep, for every night he heard the same sound in his dreams. A steady heartbeat echoing through the dark halls, the rhythm that matched the new background noise detected across every communication channel. For beats, pause, for beats, pause, the universal signal of the Terran War Network, the signal of awakening. But he dismissed it, convincing himself it was coincidence, the final act of arrogance that would doom them all. And so, the galaxy carried on, laughing at humanity, believing in their own illusion of control, while in the silent corners of the void, the stars themselves began to flicker as shadows passed between them, vast and cold, the first Terran fleets assembling beyond known space, waiting for the order that would change everything. And though the Council could not see them yet, something in the air had shifted. The universe felt different, heavier, like the calm before a storm so vast that no one who lived through it would ever forget its name. The day humanity stopped being mocked and started being remembered. The first fleet vanished without a sound, not in battle, not in chaos, but in silence so absolute it terrified even the most arrogant admirals of the Galactic Council. The convoy of 200 ships had been patrolling the outer rim near the Terran border, carrying soldiers, diplomats, and scientists who believed they were untouchable under the banner of the Council. Their last transmission was routine, a simple report of all clear. Then static, then nothing. The fleet disappeared as if swallowed by the void. No debris, no radiation, not even a ripple of energy in space. The Council sent search teams, hundreds of probes scanning the system, but found only drifting starlight. The admiral in charge of the investigation, a Vrixian warlord named Tor Valen, stared at the empty readings in disbelief, his voice trembling. Nothing can erase a fleet of that size. Yet the screen showed nothing but darkness. Then his assistant whispered, "Sir, there's something else." On the edge of the system, faint and distorted, an audio pulse repeated endlessly through the static. For slow beats, pause. For slow beats, pause. Like the rhythm of a heart. The admiral ordered it decoded, and when the sound was cleaned, words appeared hidden in the waveform, translated into the Council's universal code. "We hear your laughter." Panic spread through the Council's military, though their leaders refused to admit it, declaring it a sensor malfunction and ordering the report sealed. But rumors spread faster than truth. Captains whispered that the humans were back, that Earth's silence was not surrender but signal. Entire crews refused to patrol near Terran space. Colonies began to report strange sightings. Flashes of light in the black, shadows moving faster than any known ship. One miner swore he saw a colossal silhouette pass in front of a star, blotting it out for almost a full minute before vanishing. But when authorities checked his logs, they found the data wiped clean, replaced by a single line of human code that read, "You're looking the wrong way." The council dismissed it again, but fear had begun to grow like a sickness, quiet and invisible, inside the hearts of those who had once laughed the loudest. Weeks later, a second fleet disappeared, this one commanded by the Therax Empire, the most advanced military in the galaxy. Their dreadnoughts were armored with neutronium plating, their shields capable of withstanding the explosion of suns. They went to teach Earth respect, broadcasting their intent across open channels, promising to display human wreckage as trophies. But 3 hours after entering Terran space, every single ship vanished from the network. Their last transmission came from the flagship Obsidian Crown, its captain's voice distorted and terrified. "They're not using weapons. The stars are gone." Then static, then silence, and for a long moment the galaxy held its breath, until every display screen in the council chamber flickered to life, unbidden, showing a single image. A fleet of Terran ships, massive and silent, floating above the ruins of an unknown world, the black hulls bearing a single white insignia, the Terran star, and, beneath it, a message burned in crimson letters: peace was never theirs to give. The council tried to contain the panic, deploying propaganda across their networks, claiming it was a human illusion, a false transmission designed to spread fear, but deep down even the proudest species felt the truth. They had awakened something older, stronger, and far more patient than they could ever understand. The humans were no longer the explorers they had mocked. They had become the storm that watched from the horizon, waiting for arrogance to finish writing its own epitaph. Civilian worlds began to report failures in navigation beacons, planetary defense systems deactivated without command. Entire trade routes collapsed overnight. Pilots described strange gravitational distortions that pulled their ships off course, and sometimes, when they looked out the windows into the dark, they swore they saw reflections that didn't belong to them, ghosts of steel moving through the void. In a desperate attempt to prove control, the Council sent their elite recon division, the Eyes of the Galaxy, equipped with stealth ships and advanced scanners, to trace the Terran signal to its source. They entered the Perseus Expanse, a region of space long abandoned since the Great War, a place said to be haunted by dead AIs and war debris. But within hours, the recon ships vanished too. Only one probe survived long enough to transmit an image before it was destroyed. A picture that shook every intelligence agency to its core, a structure larger than a moon floating silently in the dark, its surface carved with 1,000 glowing veins of blue light, a human construct, a shipyard, ancient and alive, and orbiting it were hundreds of Leviathan-class warships, their hulls polished black, reflecting the faint light of dying stars. The file was classified instantly, sealed under emergency orders, but nothing stays hidden forever, and within a week, the image leaked to the black markets, reaching even the outer colonies. The entire galaxy saw the truth. Earth was not defenseless, it was rebuilding. The Speaker of the Council called for calm, his voice trembling as he addressed billions. "The humans seek intimidation, not war," he declared, but even he couldn't hide the fear in his eyes, because he had seen something the others hadn't, deep in the corner of the image. The silhouette of a figure standing on the hull of one Leviathan, human-sized, glowing faintly, as if watching the stars. Rumor spread that it was not an image at all, but a live feed that the humans had shown themselves, deliberately to let the galaxy know they were no longer hiding. Across alien worlds, entire populations began to panic, some demanding their governments surrender to Earth, others preparing for war. The galaxy that once laughed at humanity was now paralyzed by the sound of its own heartbeat echoing back from the void. At the same time, strange things began happening within the Council itself. Systems malfunctioned, data records rewritten, security clearances revoked, entire sections of their network going dark. Engineers discovered traces of code that weren't alien. It was human, old Terran cyber architecture buried within their mainframe, meaning the Council had been infiltrated for weeks, maybe months, and no one had noticed. The Speaker shouted in rage, demanding to know how it was possible. But the AI, overseeing the Council's network, spoke only one word before shutting itself down: observation. Then all lights went out, plunging the Senate Hall into darkness, and when they came back online, the central display showed a hologram of Earth, surrounded by orbiting lights that formed a single sentence: You taught us how to bow. Now learn how to kneel. The following day, half the galaxy's NAV beacons began transmitting the same human heartbeat code, the pulse echoing across every system. Scientists tried to block it, jam it, destroy it, but it was unstoppable, like a virus made of rhythm, a sound of life and warning. It infected communication lines, security feeds, even the personal implants of the Council soldiers. Some began to hear whispers in their dreams, human voices speaking in calm tones. We warned you. We remember. We see you. And then the visions began. Holograms of Terran soldiers appearing in empty corridors, flickering in and out like ghosts. Entire crews abandoning ships out of fear of being haunted by humans who hadn't even fired a shot yet. For the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy remembered fear. The kind of fear that comes from realizing that the smallest species you mocked had never stopped evolving, had never forgotten the art of patience. And when the last council meeting convened to address the situation, their screens flickered once more, showing only static before a single Terran voice spoke, calm, steady, and cold. Your fleets are gone, your systems compromised, your arrogance measured. A pause followed then. The voice continued. You once said we were beasts. Perhaps you were right. But even beasts remember who hurt them. And with that, the transmission ended, leaving only silence and the sound of that endless heartbeat pulsing through the chamber walls. The galaxy didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning. The vanishing fleets were not the punishment. They were the warning, and the humans had given the Council one last chance to remember humility before mercy vanished forever. And in the darkness between the stars, the Leviathan fleets moved like shadows across eternity, waiting for the command that would turn silence into fire, and when it came, the galaxy would finally understand the cost of its laughter. For centuries, the galaxy had whispered legends about the old gods of war, the Terran fleets that vanished after the Great Conflict, ships so massive and advanced that even the laws of physics bent around them. But like all legends, they faded into myth, dismissed as human exaggeration, until the day the stars themselves proved otherwise. It began in the uncharted systems beyond the Varelian Nebula, where a small mining convoy picked up an impossible energy reading, a ripple in spacetime that pulsed in perfect rhythm with the human heartbeat code. The miners froze as the nebula began to glow, its clouds twisting into spirals of blue and silver. Then a shadow moved inside the light, enormous, silent, and alive. The scanners overloaded, magnetic fields collapsed, and one of the miners whispered, "That's not a ship, that's a city." Before his transmission went dead, across the galaxy the Council received fragments of the signal, distorted but unmistakable. A Terran voice whispering from the storm, "Observation complete. Phase 1 concluded." The next moment the Varelian Nebula exploded outward like a dying sun, waves of energy cascading across hundreds of light years. Every system in range went dark, and when sensors came back online, hundreds of new objects were detected emerging from the dust. Massive structures of black alloy, each shaped like a spear, stretching kilometers long, glowing with faint blue veins that pulsed like blood. The Leviathans had returned. The galaxy panicked, entire governments declaring martial law, their fleets scrambling to respond. But no one could find a trace of the Terrans beyond those silent giants that now hung in space like ancient statues, unmoving and cold. The Council sent out a transmission demanding identification, but the only reply came through a direct broadcast to every star system simultaneously. A female voice, calm, human, unmistakably confident. "You called us beasts. Now behold what beasts build." The transmission ended, and before anyone could react, the Leviathans moved, their engines making no sound, their presence bending light itself. One moment they were shadows, the next they surrounded entire fleets without firing a single shot. Alien commanders screamed orders to open fire, but their weapons failed, systems froze, and a new message appeared on every screen: weapon authority revoked. Terran override engaged. Every starship in the surrounding systems found itself powerless, their own guns turned off by an invisible hand. The Council realized in horror that the humans had not only built fleets, they had rebuilt control. Their ancient AI network known as the Core was still embedded deep within the galactic grid. A ghost that had never died, now awake and in full command. On the Council homeworld of Titania Prime, chaos erupted, citizens running through the streets as the sky filled with streaks of blue light. Not explosions but Terran drones descending in perfect formation, each one landing silently, scanning structures, observing but not attacking. It was psychological warfare at its finest. Humanity didn't need to destroy. They just reminded the galaxy how small it really was. The Speaker of the Council screamed into his comms. What do they want? But the answer came not in words, but in sight. Every city's sky filled with a projection of Earth, glowing in the dark, orbiting stars like a divine symbol. Beneath it appeared a single message written in Terran standard. We were silent because we remembered peace. You broke it. The crowd fell silent, and for the first time since the Council's creation, the mighty rulers of the galaxy bowed their heads in fear, their arrogance turning into cold realization that humanity had become something beyond comprehension. Meanwhile on Earth, deep within the Terran War Council chamber, the commanders stood before the central hologram, watching as the Leviathans took their positions across the galaxy, each one marking a system that once enslaved or humiliated humans. The AI voice of the core spoke softly. Leviathan fleet operational. Awaiting directive. Commander Elias Roan, now older, scarred, and weary, stood silently before the glowing image of the galaxy, his reflection flickering in its light. Do not strike yet, he said. Let them understand what fear feels like. And across the galaxy the Terran fleets complied, remaining motionless, waiting. Their presence alone rewriting the balance of power. Entire civilizations paused their wars. Empires that had feuded for millennia suddenly signed peace treaties out of sheer terror that humanity might notice them next. The galaxy had never been this quiet before. The silence itself felt alive, as if the stars were holding their breath. Then came the moment that changed everything. The Therax Empire, still defiant, sent their grand armada of 10,000 ships to confront the Terrans near the ruined system of Sereth, believing that overwhelming numbers could crush fear. Their broadcast played across the networks. We do not fear Earth, their admiral declared. We command the galaxy. And in that same instant, the stars behind him dimmed, a shadow consuming the horizon. The Leviathans emerged from folded space, hundreds of them, each larger than mountains, their hulls glowing with quiet fury. The Therax ships opened fire, millions of plasma rounds lighting up the void. But the beams vanished into the darkness, absorbed like raindrops in the sea. Then the Leviathans responded, not with noise, not with heat, but with gravity itself, bending the fabric of space into crushing waves that folded the enemy fleet like paper. Thousands of ships imploded in seconds. No explosions, no fire, only silence and light. When it ended, the Terran voice echoed through the comms, calm and final. You fired first. We finished what you started. The galaxy watched in horror as the most powerful fleet in existence was erased in 3 minutes. Their homeworld lit up with distress signals that went unanswered, and the Council knew the truth. They had mocked the wrong species. The aftermath was chaos. Empires fell overnight, rebellion spread, colonies declared neutrality, and through it all the Terrans said nothing. Their fleets simply remained in orbit over the systems they had once been exiled from. Their AI-controlled ships broadcasting a single message over and over. Remember her? No one knew who her was, but historians whispered it referred to General Arya Voss, the human diplomat assassinated centuries ago. The one who ended the last great war through peace. The one whose death the Council had tried to erase from history. Now her name had returned like divine judgment. The aliens began calling the Terran fleets the old gods, beings beyond reason or mercy, and every time a Leviathan appeared in the sky, entire populations fell to their knees, praying for forgiveness from the humans they once ridiculed. And then, one night, the stars shifted again, the entire galactic network flickered, and the core transmitted a message to every sentient being, its tone calm, almost kind. We are not gods, we are not conquerors, we are what you made us. The message ended, and silence fell once more, a silence that spoke louder than any war ever could, because every living being knew what came next. The humans had returned, not as equals, not as servants, but as the architects of fear and the keepers of peace. The old gods of war reborn under one truth. The galaxy would never laugh at Earth again. It began with silence. Not the calm kind, but the heavy one that comes before a storm. Across the galaxy the stars seemed to dim as if afraid of what was coming. The council worlds that once ruled everything sat in fear, watching the skies for the return of the Terran fleets. Every system that mocked humanity now prayed for mercy. Entire planets stopped their broadcasts. And in that fearful quiet, the humans finally spoke. A single transmission spread through every communication channel, every ship, every planet, every mind. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't anger. It was calm and cold. We came in peace once, and you laughed. Now you will remember what peace costs. The voice was human, male, strong, and filled with sorrow more than rage. It belonged to Commander Elias Rohn, the same man who walked out of the council chambers when they called humanity beasts. And his voice echoed across stars like judgment. We are done asking. The next second, every Leviathan in the galaxy lit up at once, hundreds of black giants glowing with blue light as their cores activated. The humans had unleashed something the galaxy had only heard about in nightmares. Project Aegis, the weapon that could rewrite gravity itself. Entire defense fleets tried to respond, but their weapons went dead. Disabled by invisible Terran code, drones fell from orbit, communication lines shattered. And then, like a storm swallowing worlds, the Leviathans moved, not to destroy, but to kneel above every capital planet, hovering silently, casting massive shadows that turned day into night, their hulls humming like thunder. And for the first time in galactic history, every world looked up at the same moment and saw humanity staring back at them from the sky. On Titania Prime, the heart of the Galactic Council, the speaker ran through the halls as alarms blared, thousands of alien citizens screaming as the light dimmed. When he reached the balcony, he looked up and froze. Above the clouds floated a single Leviathan, larger than mountains, its black surface reflecting the city lights like glass. Then from its hull descended hundreds of smaller ships, Terran drones forming patterns in the air that shaped the old symbol of Earth, the white star. Every camera across the planet captured the image, and within minutes it was streaming across the galaxy, the same symbol appearing above every council world, every empire capital, every moon that had ever mocked the Terran name. The humans had turned their vengeance into art, silent and precise, not conquering, not killing, but showing absolute control, the kind of dominance that didn't need words. The council sent out pleas for negotiation. Desperate voices shouting into the void. We surrender. Please. We recognize Earth as equal. But no reply came. Instead, a deep voice came through the air, calm and heavy. Equality was never yours to give. And then the humans did something no one expected. They did not destroy, they began to rebuild. The Leviathans released waves of nanite energy across bombarded systems, restoring what had been broken, repairing the cities that once burned, healing the damage of wars the Council had ignored. Humanity was not just punishing. They were teaching, showing mercy that terrified more than any weapon ever could. On the world of Krell, where the first anti-human decree was signed, the alien High Governor stood on his balcony watching a Terran ship descend. His guards trembling, their weapons useless, the ship landed silently and opened, but no soldiers came out. Instead, a small hologram flickered in front of him. A woman in a Terran uniform, her voice soft and filled with steel. You enslaved our people, you called us lesser, now you will protect them as your own. And before he could respond, the hologram vanished, leaving behind a Terran data core with one command: rebuild with honor. The governor fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face, whispering, "Forgive us." As above him, the Terran ship ascended, disappearing into the clouds. Across hundreds of systems, similar scenes unfolded, Terran ships appearing, issuing one order, and leaving, not as conquerors but as judges, each command restoring justice to the places humanity once suffered. And with every act, the galaxy understood a terrible truth. Humans were not seeking revenge, they were enforcing peace through power, mercy used as a weapon sharper than any blade. The news networks of the galaxy went dark for hours, every channel overridden by a single broadcast, an image of Earth from orbit, its blue glow spreading across the screen. And then the voice of Commander Rohn again. You wanted to see the beasts, he said quietly. Now you will see what happens when beasts remember who they are. His tone carried no hatred, only certainty. We do not destroy for pleasure, we do not kill for pride, we do not rule for power, we act because you left us no choice. This is not revenge, this is remembrance. And with those words the broadcast ended, replaced by the same symbol of the white star pulsing slowly on every device. For beats, pause, for beats, Pause. The heartbeat of Earth itself. The empress of the Therax Empire, once so proud, once so cruel, fell to her knees in her throne room, her guards dropping their weapons, the walls of her palace shaking as a Terran voice echoed through her chamber. Your empire ends today, not by fire, but by silence. And in that silence she heard it. The hum of her palace reactors powering down, every weapon offline, every defense deactivated, and then the roof above opened, not destroyed but gently pulled apart by invisible force, revealing the stars above, and among them floated the shape of a leviathan, vast and calm, its shadow covering her world. She looked up and whispered, "Mercy," and the ship above her tilted slightly, almost like a nod, then rose back into the darkness, leaving her world untouched, but forever changed. For mercy from a god is more terrifying than punishment from a devil. Within hours the Council transmitted an emergency decree to all member species. Effective immediately, Earth is recognized as the supreme authority of peace enforcement. The document was signed by trembling hands, broadcast to every colony, and while some argued that it was forced, others knew it was the only way to survive. They had begged for mercy, and mercy was granted, but under one unspoken condition: never forget who granted it. Across the galaxy, children were taught a new lesson, simple yet eternal. Do not mock the ones who speak softly, for they are the ones who taught silence to the stars. And somewhere deep in the void, in the command chamber of the Terran core, Elias Rohn watched the holograms of 1,000 worlds kneeling under the shadow of leviathans, his expression unreadable. The AI beside him whispered, "Dominion complete." But he shook his head slowly. "No, not dominion," he said. "Balance?" The AI paused, then asked, "And if they forget again?" Rohn turned toward the hologram of Earth glowing gently in the dark. "Then we remind them," he said quietly. "But not with fire, not with blood, with fear." And as he spoke, the galaxy turned slowly in the background, millions of stars flickering in quiet obedience, all of them carrying the echo of that heartbeat that no one could silence anymore, the sound of humanity alive, awake, and watching. That day would be remembered forever, not as the day Earth conquered the stars, but as the day the galaxy begged for mercy and humanity, for the first time in history, decided to give it, the day when the laughter stopped, the day when peace learned fear. The galaxy trembled as the message spread. The Council had surrendered, the empires had fallen silent, and for the first time in recorded history, every major civilization turned its gaze toward one planet, one voice, one species, Earth. The world once mocked as primitive now stood as judge over the stars, its blue glow haunting the night skies of 1,000 worlds. And yet, from Earth itself, there was no celebration, no triumph, only silence, the calm of something vast and patient deciding what must come next. Deep beneath the surface of New Geneva, in the Terran citadel, the War Council gathered, the commanders, diplomats, scientists, and the sentient AI core that guided their fleets, standing in a circle beneath the projection of the galaxy spinning slowly above them, each system glowing like a heartbeat, the room dim except for the pale blue light reflecting off their faces. Commander Elias Rohn stood at the center, his hands behind his back, his voice steady but heavy with the weight of what humanity had become. "They begged for mercy," he said quietly, "and we gave it." He paused, looking around the chamber. "Now they will beg for forgiveness, but not from us, from what they created." The AI responded in its cold, even tone. "Designation. Judgment protocol pending confirmation." Rohn nodded once. "Confirmed." And at that command, the Leviathan fleets across the galaxy came alive again, their engines humming with quiet thunder. But instead of turning their weapons toward the Council worlds, they projected vast holograms into the sky, the image of Earth glowing above every capital. And then a message appeared in simple text written in Terran Standard: "You will stand trial." On Titania Prime, the Speaker of the Council fell to his knees as the message appeared over the skyline. The citizens gathered in the streets, their eyes wide as Terran drones descended silently, surrounding the Senate Hall, not attacking, not arresting, only watching, recording. One of them projected a hologram of Commander Rohn, his expression calm but unreadable. "This is not conquest," he said. "This is consequence." The aliens trembled as his voice echoed through the air. "Every world that participated in humanity's humiliation will answer for it, not with blood, But with truth, you will confess to your arrogance, your cruelty, your deceit, and then you will rebuild what you destroyed. And as his image faded, the drones began broadcasting every word across the galaxy. There would be no hiding, no denying, the trial of the council had begun. Across the stars, one by one, every empire received its verdict. The Therax Empire ordered to dismantle its war fleets, their shipyards converted into hospitals, the Zealer Dominion forced to release all species they had enslaved, their rulers stripped of power and exiled to live under Terran supervision. The Vrixian Syndicate commanded to return every stolen colony to its rightful inhabitants, each punishment precise, clean, and undeniable. Humanity didn't kill, they corrected, and that terrified the galaxy more than any war ever had, because mercy from humanity was worse than death. It left you alive to face what you had done. Entire governments broadcast apologies across the void, alien leaders crying on public screens, whispering Earth's name like a prayer, as if forgiveness had become the only thing that mattered in the universe. Meanwhile, in the Citadel, the AI core spoke softly, its voice like wind through steel. All subjects have complied. Shall we enforce compliance on remaining dissenters? Roan shook his head. No, they are not enemies anymore. They are lessons. He looked up at the holographic map, the galaxy glowing in faint blue light. The stars needed a teacher, not a tyrant. He turned toward the council. We were mocked for our humanity once. Now they will learn what it truly means. The AI paused, as if thinking, then said, Humanity has fulfilled its objective. What is our purpose now? Roan's voice softened, to make sure they never forget. And the core dimmed its lights, acknowledging his command. On the council homeworld, the alien citizens began rebuilding their cities under Terran guidance, human engineers working side by side with the same species that once enslaved them, teaching them structure, order, compassion, even empathy. The galaxy began to heal, but in that healing was fear, for above every city floated a single Terran satellite. Watching, listening, waiting, silent reminders that Earth's judgment was not temporary. It was eternal. The old gods of war had become guardians, and no one dared challenge them again. The media renamed the event the Great Trial, and stories spread across the stars of how the humans, instead of erasing their enemies, had forced them to live with their shame, to rebuild the world they broke. One alien scholar wrote, The Terrans did not destroy our worlds, they destroyed our pride. And those words echoed through generations as truth. But there was one world that refused to submit. A small outer colony ruled by a fanatic warlord who declared, Earth cannot rule forever. They will fall like all empires. His broadcast spread across the galaxy for only 30 seconds before his entire planet went dark. Not from weapons, not from fire, but from silence. Its lights flickered once, and then a calm human voice echoed across the void. Judgment concluded, and the system vanished from the star maps. No debris, no survivors, just empty space. The message was clear. Defiance would be met not with rage, but with erasure. After that, no one else spoke against Earth again. Months passed, and the galaxy slowly began to function under the new order. A fragile peace spreading through every system, not born from diplomacy, but from fear and understanding. Every year the Council gathered on Earth for what was now called the Convocation of Balance, where alien leaders walked barefoot through the halls of the Terran Citadel, laying offerings before a massive monument in the city square, a statue of a human woman standing tall with one hand raised to the stars and the other resting on a globe of light. Beneath it, carved in every known language, were the words, Peace was never free. No one knew who she was, but historians whispered her name, Arya Voss, the woman who once ended the Great War and whose death had ignited this new era of judgment. Her image had become a symbol of both hope and fear, and when the alien leaders stood before her statue, they bowed, not to a goddess, but to the truth she represented, that humanity remembers everything. At the end of the first convocation, Commander Roan addressed the Council for the last time. His voice transmitted across every system. Today the galaxy stands united, not by blood, not by conquest, but by the memory of what arrogance costs. He looked around the hall, filled with alien faces that once mocked his species, now silent, humble, and listening. We are not your masters, we are your mirror. Look into it and decide who you wish to become. He paused, then added, Our judgment is not punishment, it's protection, for all of us. And with that, he stepped down from the dais, his figure disappearing into the light as the hall erupted in quiet applause, the sound of reconciliation, fragile but real. When night fell on Earth, the Leviathans left orbit one by one, their engines fading into silence, returning to the deep void to sleep once again. Their purpose complete, but their presence eternal, above the citadel. The stars glowed brighter than they ever had, and for the first time in history, the galaxy was truly at peace, not because humanity demanded it, but because everyone finally understood it, and as the Terran core dimmed its lights for the night, its last message echoed softly. Through the data streams, judgment delivered, peace maintained, memory preserved, and somewhere far beyond the edge of known space, where the old war machines drifted in quiet formation, a new light blinked awake, the heartbeat of Earth pulsing once more, not in anger, but as a reminder that peace will always belong to those who have the strength to protect it. Years passed, and the galaxy learned to breathe again. The stars that once burned with war now glowed softly under the quiet watch of Earth. The name of humanity had become something between reverence and fear, spoken in whispers across the endless void. The species that had been mocked, enslaved, and dismissed as primitive had now become legend, the architects of balance, the keepers of peace, and the silent judges of the stars. Yet Earth itself had changed too. It no longer sent warships or fleets, it no longer needed to, because its shadow alone kept the galaxy honest. The Terran core remained active beneath the oceans of the blue planet, listening, watching, recording, but its war machines slept again, buried in the dark of space like old gods who had done their duty, ready to wake only if the universe forgot the cost of arrogance. Children across alien worlds now studied human history in their schools, their teachers showing holos of the great Leviathans, of Commander Elias Roan standing before the council, and of the ancient human woman whose monument towered over New Geneva, Arya Voss, the woman who had ended all wars. Her face had become a symbol of what it meant to be more than power, what it meant to be mercy in a world that once mocked it. On the 1000th anniversary of the Great Trial, representatives from every civilization gathered on Earth, from insectoid colonies to crystalline beings of light. They filled the vast arena built where the first human city once stood, the place where everything had begun. At the center of the arena stood the statue of Arya Voss, restored and glimmering beneath a shield of light, and beside it burned the eternal flame of remembrance. As the crowd fell silent, the current speaker of the Galactic Council, a small, frail creature with 4 eyes, stepped forward, bowing deeply, his voice trembling as he addressed the billions watching across the galaxy. 1,000 years ago, he said, we called the humans lesser beings, and for that, we nearly lost the stars themselves. They showed us who we were. They showed us what peace means, and they never asked for thanks. They only demanded that we remember. He turned to face the hologram of Earth spinning slowly above them. And we do. The crowd echoed him in unison, billions of voices saying the same word. We remember. And for a moment, the sound rippled across space itself, like the heartbeat that once terrified them, now returned as a hymn. In the quiet control chamber beneath the citadel, the last of the original human AIs still functioned, its mind ancient, its tone soft. It watched the ceremony from its sensors and whispered to no one in particular, they remember good. And then, from the archive vaults, it opened a recording, one that hadn't been played in centuries, the voice of Arya Voss herself, her tone calm and gentle. If humanity is to rise above vengeance, it must learn to protect without hatred, to lead without pride, and to remember without pain. The AI stored the file once more and dimmed its lights, the world above it peace, the galaxy silent, and yet, deep beyond the edge of known space, beyond the black rim where stars no longer shine, a faint pulse, awakened again, slow, rhythmic, and familiar, the heartbeat of Earth carried by the void itself, whispering to all who listened, we are still here. Generations passed, and the galaxy evolved, new species were born, old empires faded into dust, but every world carried one story through its blood, the story of the humans, the ones who once came from a small blue planet and taught the stars humility. Their story was told not as myth but as warning, because no one ever forgot the day the sky went dark and the Leviathans appeared, No one forgot the moment when mercy became more terrifying than destruction. And no one forgot that Earth never needed to rule, the universe itself chose to obey. On the farthest moon of Titania Prime, the last surviving monument of the old council still stood. A cracked spire engraved with a simple line written in Terran language. Here lies the arrogance that once mocked humanity. Travelers who passed by often stopped to touch the words, feeling the chill of the cold stone and whispering the same sentence that had defined a millennium. They mocked humans as lesser beings. Then they begged for mercy. In time, the galaxy began to see Earth not as a planet, but as an idea, the idea that strength could exist without cruelty, that forgiveness could conquer what fear never could, and every new world that joined the Interstellar Alliance was made to swear an oath beneath Aria's statue. The same promise humanity had once carved into the stars: peace was never free. At night, when the stars above Earth flickered, some said they could see shadows moving among them, the old leviathans watching silently from the dark, their blue veins glowing faintly as if nodding in approval. Others said it was only a story, but those who had seen the archives, who had read the history carved in light, knew better. They knew that the humans never truly left. They were just waiting, patient as time itself, listening to the heartbeat of creation, ready to return if arrogance ever dared to rise again. And so the story of humanity lived on, not as conquerors, not as saviors, but as memory, the kind that never fades, because some lessons must be remembered forever. And in the deep silence between galaxies, where light itself moves slower than thought, that heartbeat still echoes, a soft rhythm carried by the universe, for beats, pause, endless, eternal, reminding all life that there was once a small world that defied the gods and became one. A species that could not be broken, could not be erased, could not be forgotten. A species called humanity, the guardians of peace, the architects of mercy, the judges of arrogance, and the one name every star still whispers when darkness falls: Earth.